Hi, my friends, JRDukes with JRDukes.com coming at you with another video. Unfortunately, we have yet another alleged case of police abuse to examine. Today's case involves a gentleman by the name of Robert Earl Edwards. This is a case that has just come to light, although it is back from March 4th, 2019. One of the reporters there in Fayetteville County, North Carolina, did an excellent job of presenting the story. At any rate, this is brought to us by CBS17.com. Their reporter there is a Kayla Strayer, and she has done a fantastic job, in my mind, of presenting the case in a factual manner. At any rate, what we have here is we have a gentleman by the name of Robert Earl Edwards. We're going to call him Robert Edwards just for simplicity's sake. And he lives in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is incidentally just 200 miles west of Elizabeth City. And we realize everybody should know by now that Elizabeth City has definitely been in the news because that is where the case of Mr. Andrew Brown is still going on. At any rate, in the same state of North Carolina, in this town called Fayetteville, North Carolina, this 63-year-old cancer patient, he is a cancer patient, 63 years old. He ends up having an altercation with his granddaughter's ex-boyfriend. So essentially you have three people at the home of Mr. Edwards. By the way, Mr. Edwards, I had to dig through the public records and the case files. I was able to find that he lives on Topeka Street in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So basically you have Robert Edwards, who is the grandfather, 63-year-old cancer patient. You have his granddaughter. I could not find her name listed anywhere in the report, so we're just going to call her granddaughter. And the same goes for the ex-boyfriend. We'll call him ex-boyfriend. And then the two police officers that were at the scene was a female officer by the name of Officer Scullin, and then the arresting officer is Officer P. Gillette. First on scene, responding to a request with a man that was threatening two individuals with a gun, was Officer Scullin. Officer Scullin was at the scene, and obviously she needed backup, so she contacted the second officer, Officer P. Gillette, to come over and help out with this particular matter. Now, we're going to shortly take a look at this video in its entirety, or at least as far as it's been reported so far, so that you could have a good look at exactly what's transpired in this particular altercation. Essentially, Mr. Robert Edwards and the ex-boyfriend are fighting, along with his granddaughter and the ex-boyfriend. Now, this case is not necessarily a clean-cut case in my mind, on my just my opinion. This case is not what I would call a clear-cut case of police abuse or police corruption of some sort. There is an important point that this case sheds a light on, and I want for us to review that, and that will be something that I'll talk about near the end of this particular video. On camera, you can see the grandfather, Mr. Robert Edwards, actually hitting the boyfriend with his fist. Subsequent to this, you could see the granddaughter also doing the same thing. So this was brought to us by CBS17.com, Fayetteville, North Carolina. A Fayetteville man says excessive force was used during his arrest in 2019, causing him to have a concussion and other injuries. Remember, this is a cancer patient. Robert Edwards is suing the city for his medical expenses and pain and suffering. Edwards says he and his granddaughter called police for help because his granddaughter's ex-boyfriend had threatened them both with a gun. Folks, remember, when you call the police, you're essentially inviting the public officials, into your private affairs. And that can, by definition, always have a bad ending. So always keep that in mind. CBS 17 requested two retired NYPD officers, a Robert Young and a James Johnson, to review the body camera video released in this case. The body camera footage shows both Edwards and his granddaughter hitting the other man in front of the officer. So as I said earlier, you have the grandfather and the granddaughter on camera hitting the man, which subjects both of them to immediate arrest. Both retired officers say this is probable cause to arrest both Edwards and the granddaughter. In my eyes, the officers didn't do anything wrong, Young said. There was also an ongoing verbal altercation between the three, while the granddaughter continues to yell profanities at the officers. Edwards was told by the officers to step back away from the other man, but the video shows he continued to press forward. Not good. He, the other officer, told him not to come forward again, and he did not listen to directions, Young said. Edwards was then taken to the ground in handcuffs. Now, this is where the problem comes in, and we're going to talk about this in depth. The video shows Edwards on the ground, not responding immediately after that happened, snoring several times and not being coherent while the officers checked on him. Remember, this is a 63-year-old elderly gentleman that is a cancer patient. During this time, his granddaughter was screaming, "Black Lives Matter," and "This is what white cops do to you. This is why you don't call the police." Edwards says excessive force was used on him during the arrest because he is black. "Me being black, there is no reason for you to jump on a 63-year-old man," Edwards said. "It looks like they leg swept him, and he goes head first into the pavement, resulting in a concussion, a brain bleed, and a bruised brain," says Michael Porter, Edwards' attorney. "In no instance should a 63-year-old frail cancer patient be body slammed." Not everybody can be arrested easily, and it's not an easy part of the job, and people do get hurt during those incidents, Young says. In body camera footage after the arrest, you can hear an officer telling Edwards, "I got an ambulance coming to check you out because you hit your head pretty hard. I put you on the ground because you weren't listening. You were trying to fight the other young man on the street." Johnson and Young said they did not see any racial bias coming from the officers in the video. "You saw the officers being very polite," Johnson said. "If you put all of this together, they handled this in the correct way that is both tactically sound and even socially acceptable. You saw the officers being very polite," Johnson said. "If you put all that together, they handle this in the correct way that is both tactically sound and even socially acceptable to an objective person." "I don't believe excessive force was used at all," Young said. "I believe that he did what he had to do." Edwards says he was taken to the hospital after his arrest and then taken to jail before going home that night. I mentioned earlier that I did dig through all the files on this particular case. I actually got a hold of the court documents, and this gentleman was released after he got out of the hospital on a $500 bond. And in conclusion, the city of Fayetteville sent the statement regarding the case. "The city of Fayetteville is aware of potential lawsuit involving Mr. Edwards. There is body camera footage of the incidents which shows the events leading up to Mr. Edwards' arrest. Pursuant to a court order allowing the release of the body camera footage, the Fayetteville City Council did review the footage. In anticipation of potential litigation, a use of force expert also reviewed the footage and determined that the actions of Officer Gillette were appropriate and reasonable under the circumstances, and that Officer Gillette used the least amount of force to control the situation. The city intends to vigorously defend the lawsuit." So there you have it. That is according to CBS 17. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual video pertaining to this case, and let's see what we can learn from the video.
New tonight, body cam video released showing the arrest of a man who says excessive force was used on him. City of Fayetteville is sticking by the officers' actions, saying they are ready to defend the lawsuit filed against them. CBS 17's Kayla Strayer live in Fayetteville after talking to the man who was arrested and two retired officers who say they don't see anything wrong with this case.
Yeah, so the man who was arrested tells me that he and his granddaughter were the ones who called police for help, saying they felt threatened by his granddaughter's ex-boyfriend and that they thought he had a gun. Here's what some of the video shows happened.
How close are you?
Fayetteville police officers were called to help with a domestic situation in 2019. Officer body camera footage shows Robert Edwards hitting this man, his granddaughter's ex-boyfriend. Also in front of officers, Edwards' granddaughter is shown hitting the man as well. This means two probable causes for arrest for both the woman and her grandfather, says retired NYPD officer Robert Young.
So in my eyes, the officer didn't do anything wrong.
The video shows the continued arguing in front of officers, with the granddaughter screaming profanities at officers, and officers telling Edwards to step back. An officer arrested him when he continued moving forward.
And he told them not to come forward again, and he did not listen to directions.
Edwards says excessive force was used to take him down, causing him to hit his head and be knocked unconscious.
He being black, there's no other reason for you to jump on a 63-year-old man.
Yeah, I got an ambulance coming to check you out because you hit your head pretty hard. I put you on the ground because you weren't listening. You were trying to fight the other young man in the street.
And also, you saw the officers being very polite.
James Johnson is also a retired NYPD officer. Both men reviewed the video, coming to the same conclusion.
I don't believe excessive force was used at all. I believe that, you know, he did what he had to do.
Do you see anything, any racial bias in this case from looking at this video?
No.
You did anything wrong in this case?
No, not to be slammed in the ground.
So all charges against Edwards have been dropped, and he is filing a lawsuit against the city to pay for his medical bills and pain and suffering, saying that he had bleeding in his brain and a concussion from that arrest. The city of Fayetteville, again, sticking by the officer's actions, and city council reviewed the video, saying that they don't believe any excessive force was used, and the officer followed all protocols in this case. Reporting live in Fayetteville, Kayla Strayer, CBS 17.
The point I want to make here is we need police reform. Those of you who have been watching my channel and my videos, especially my recent videos in the last several weeks, know I am not an anti-police anything. I'm not one of these people that believe we need to abolish the police or defund the police or any of that nonsense. I do, however, believe firmly we need to review police practices. Do we want to live in a society where the police are basically trying to control us instead of serve and protect us? In this particular case, I think the number one thing we can take away is the following. Why is it that we have to take a 63-year-old cancer patient to the ground? Obviously, he suffered severe injuries and could have been killed from this particular altercation. There has to be better practices to subdue a 63-year-old cancer patient instead of slamming him head first into the ground. Could they not have simply told him to turn around and put his hands behind his back? Could they not have actually pushed him against a car, their police cruiser? Surely there's got to be a better way of doing business as a police officer. The results in this particular case warrant a review of the current police policies that we have across the country. I simply do not believe you should take a man of this particular age and slam him to the ground. Tell me what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think this was justified? Do you think it was excessive? Do you think that there are better ways to handle this particular situation? I want you to honestly think about this. Be considerate in your comments, please, and leave me a comment below. I definitely would love to hear from you. I will have videos coming out very soon that will talk more about the nature of policing around the United States, and I have very specific steps that I think will help the policing industry as a whole and provide all of us with a better, safer, more productive police force across the country. I want to thank you for tuning in today and watching today's video. If you like this type of video, do me a favor and please subscribe to my channel. Hit the thumbs up button so that I know you like the video. I want you to remember always, my friends, to have that free mind and never give up. I am JR Dukes.